Hi, Ben Johnson here to record the fourth night of our Excel class. On the fourth night, we spent most of our time talking about vertical lookup tables, which are incredibly useful if you ever find yourself in the position of having three tables that you need to bring together by ID number or something like that. And so just go ahead and open up a blank Excel spreadsheet, and we'll just pretend like we have a scenario like this. We have three tables. They all have student ID in common, and then we have different test scores. So that first table would be student ID, ACT score. Maybe we would start another table here in G. Maybe we'll have that by student ID, and maybe this is going to be SAT score. And then maybe we'll have in column K student ID, and maybe this is going to be a PARCC score. All right. Typically these different tables will get downloaded from a State Department website or your student information system or something like that. Now they all need to have something in common. Student ID, for example, some unique ID, email address, something like that. Otherwise it won't work. And then just for the sake of time, I'm just going to make ID 1, 2, and then I'll just autofill that down to say 285. So you just go ahead and autofill some IDs down, and then just make up some fake ACT scores. And so that I don't have to fill those all in, I'll just highlight those, get my autofill handle, and then I'll hold down my control key, and you'll see that second little plus sign, and then I can just repeat those down to the bottom. That way we end up with sort of realistic ACT scores. Okay, and then we'll do the same here. Maybe on this one, just to make it more realistic, I'll do every other, because typically when you're doing a project like this, it's not real clean. You've got the three different tables contain different and missing ID numbers, and so I'm just trying to make this look more realistic. I have no idea what SAT scores are, so I'm just going to wing these. So just go ahead and make up some different SAT scores, and like I said, I don't know if this is even realistic, but then just go ahead and repeat those. Get that autofill handle, hold down the control key, and just drag that to the bottom of your spreadsheet. And then we'll do the same with the PARCC score here, and this time I'll do maybe my even students. As I said before, usually when you use the vertical lookup table, it's the reason you need to use it is that you have different student IDs, missing, extras. If they're all the same, you could just sort them and easily paste them in here. And then I'll just do some different PARCC scores over here, and I think they're just on a scale of 5, and then I'll just repeat those using that same technique. So if you're practicing along with me, just go ahead and make 3 tables like I've got here. If you have access to 3 different tables like this that you can download and use instead, that's fine. So this is typically what you're going to do on a vertical lookup table is on a single spreadsheet, you're going to copy and paste tables that you've downloaded or have been sent to you and put them on a single spreadsheet. They do need to have a common ID, and that should be the first column of each of those tables. And then here you would go ahead and type the things that you're going to pull into this table, and so I'll just go ahead and type in SAT and PARCC score here. Alright, now to make life easier so that we don't have to refer to the cell addresses, we can go ahead and name these tables here. So I'll just click in that first cell, A1, and then I'll do a little trick where I hold Control Shift on my keyboard, press the right arrow once and then the down arrow once, and that quickly highlights that table. And instead of G1, I'm going to rename that SAT scores, and I'll press enter. So this table is now called SAT scores, and I'll do the same with my park scores again. Control Shift right arrow, down arrow, quickly highlights that table, and I'll rename this park scores, all lowercase, all one word, press enter. So now I've got a table here, SAT scores, a table here, park scores. That's going to be useful because now I can just refer to that as the address instead of having to use all the letters and numbers. Okay, so now we're finally ready to do the vertical lookup table. And the way that you get to your list of functions is through the FX button here. And I know that we want to use VLOOKUP, so I'll just go ahead and search for it. Now, if you didn't know to use VLOOKUP, you could try Googling what you're trying to do. Chances are you would come across the VLOOKUP tutorial, and you could watch that and learn how to do that. Alternatively, you could go to a site like Mr. Excel, post whatever it is that you're trying to do. Lots of kind people will suggest a technique, probably VLOOKUP, to do what I'm doing here. There are different ways to accomplish this, but I like VLOOKUP because it gives some nice flexibility that some of the other techniques don't offer. Anyway, we want to use VLOOKUP, so search for that, find it, click on it, hit OK. It's going to bring up this dialog box, and the first question is what value are you looking up? In other words, what student ID are you looking up? Well, it's this first student ID that's in A2. Now we don't want to type the number 1 because we want to be able to autofill this down. And so by referring to cell A2, we'll be able to autofill this function down. Okay, now it's saying, well, what table has the SAT scores in it? Now remember, we named that SAT scores so that we didn't have to use all the letters and number addresses. And you can see it gives us a nice preview here so that we know that we've selected the right thing. Okay, the next question is, of this SAT scores table, are the SAT scores in the first column or the second column? And they're in the second column, and so we type the number 2. We don't type H, we type 2 for second column. Finally, this range lookup. It's important that you type the word false here. By typing the word false here, it makes Excel find the exact match. If we left that blank, it would just find the next closest student ID and give them that SAT score, which would of course be wrong. So it's important that you type false here. Usually on your vertical lookup tables you will type false here. It just forces it to find an exact match. Then I hit OK. You can see it found student ID 1, found it 1, and gave them a 2400. Now I can autofill this down by double clicking on my autofill handle here. And whenever it couldn't find a match, it gave that student not applicable. Okay, so you can see it quickly populated those scores. Now in this example is kind of a silly example. This is not typically what your vertical lookup tables will look like, but it's going to give you an idea of how to do it, so that's why I chose this example. Then we do the same thing with park scores. Again, we hit our FX. We can search for VLOOKUP here in the search box, hit go. It's going to pull that up. We can hit OK. Brings up the same dialog box. What value are we looking up? Well, we're still looking up the student ID. Where are your park scores at? Well, they're in our park scores table that we named so that we don't have to use all the cell addresses. Are they in the first or second column? Well, they're in the second column. Do we want it to find a perfect match? Yes, so we need to type the word false here. That forces it to find an exact student ID, and then we hit OK. Student ID number 1 is missing in this table, and that's why it gave us an NA. Now we can autofill that down, and we have all of the students' park scores. So what you end up with is a single table where you've populated all of the data from these other tables into a single table. Now I might want to copy this, so I can go ahead and use my little trick here, copy this, add a new sheet, and maybe paste values only so that I don't have those formulas. Okay. Now I have this final finish table that incorporates all of the test scores into a single table. And that's called vertical lookup. If you use Excel enough, you'll find yourself in a situation like the one I described, where you have many different tables that are separate that you need to pull together by something like student ID. The vertical lookup table is really, in my opinion, the best way to accomplish that, and possibly saving you hundreds of hours of time and lots of mistakes. So that's the vertical lookup table. Keep that in your toolbox. Should you ever need it, it will save you a whole lot of time.